Okay. Hey, we're live.
Hey, we are live.
We're
We're
live.
live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday, where professionals of the healing arts and professionals of the creative arts come together to support the well being of the community. It is brought to you by Artists Striving to End Poverty, and I am one of your hosts, Keith Bell. I'm a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine coming to you from Richmond, Virginia.
And I'm Mary Mitchell Campbell. I'm your other host. And I am the executive director and founder of A Step and a Broadway music director. And today we have a very special guest who happens to be one of my I'll just say long term friends. I'm not going to say old because I don't want to say we're old. Um, but someone I've known a long time, very, very well, Mr. Raúl Esparza.
Hello, I'm
Is
Raúl. Yeah, I'm just along for the ride today. I'll go where
Welcome,
you want to
Raul.
go. How are you,
And I'm
Keith?
glad you didn't say old because I was doing research on you, sir, and we're the same age.
Yeah, no, not old.
Old.
No,
Hmm
Not old.
young.
We're the
Not
same
old.
age. I'm a
Right.
few months older than you, so we have birthdays coming up.
Yeah, we have birthdays coming up.
Oh,
Although this is not the way you'd think to celebrate. It was such a
Mm,
big birthday.
yeah, exactly. We're gonna
We'll
be
the
what,
see.
25?
We're gonna be 25.
25. Can't wait.
Can't wait.
Um,
Hey,
so, Keith, did you want to start us off with something specific today?
I do. So we decided we're gonna do something a little different, and each of our Wellness Wednesdays, we are going to not only inspire you, but we're gonna give you a practical technique that you can take home and use today. And today I'm going to teach you all a manifestation meditation. It's something that I learned 30 years ago, and I'm only 24, but 30 years ago on how to manifest that which you desire or how to transform negative emotions. So, Mr. Raul, as our guest, what would you like to manifest today? And I'm going to teach this meditation.
I would like to manifest hope, like, faith in the future, because I'm not feeling it right now.
Hope, oh my goodness, that's great because hope is directly tied to the breath. So when we inhale, that's an inspiration. That is hope. It's literal and figurative inspiration. And for this manifestation meditation, the first thing we need to know is what a complete breath is. So a complete breath is an inhalation or an inspiration, a pause, an expiration, and a pause. People forget that we have these pauses between our breaths. And it's really important in manifesting that we can actually charge the breath. So we're going to charge our breath today with hope. And we're actually going to inhale hope and exhale hope into the world. So when we manifest with this meditation, again, you want to realize that there are different parts of the breath. So inhale, pause, exhale, pause. That's a complete breath that we use every day. So when we want to bring something into our life, the pause before the inspiration, we charge it. So today we're charging it with hope. So we say in our mind, hope, and we inhale, hope. During the exhalation, we say, I am open to receive hope. You can say this in your mind. So exhale, pause, hope. We inhale hope, and as we exhale, we say, I am open to receive hope. So, what a lot of people don't realize is during the exhale, when we're talking or we're thinking, we're putting that energy out into the world. The energy that we want to put out is an openness to receive. So, again, this is actually a very powerful meditation that I've used that's treated me well in life. So again, so you just do it I do it for 20 minutes. You can do it for 5 minutes. But again, so empty your breath, exhale. I am open to receive hope. And hope and inhale hope. I am open to receive hope. Exhale into the world. So the parts of this is you 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 arrange it with the breath. You say what you want to receive before you inhale. You inhale it. And as you exhale, you let the universe know that you're open to receive it. And that's a part that a lot of people forget is they say what they want, but they don't state that they're open to get it. So there's our manifestation meditation for today.
That's fantastic. We're going to just do that for the next 20 minutes, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
There's people watching us.
Exactly. Hey.
It's amazing how quickly even just remembering to breathe deeply for like 5 or 6 times right now, 10 times, you instantly, everything goes, oh. It's not
Yeah.
relaxation, but just to kind of like, I'm okay, just for a split second,
It
which I
is.
forget to do. I forget to breathe. I think I would forget to breathe all day.
Right. And what people don't realize is when you're breathing and you're thinking and you have emotions, and if you're not mindful of the emotion, as you inhale, you're pulling that to you. So if you're angry or frustrated or resentful or anything like that, and you're inhaling, you're actually bringing more of it to you. And as you're exhaling, you're putting that out into the world. So this is a very easy way to actually transform our emotional state. So if you're in a negative emotion, you pick the positive emotion you want, you state it, you inhale it into your lungs, and then you state to the world that emotion that you're putting back out. So today we have hope.
That's good. Good. Yay! All right.
Yay!
Cool. So the topic of the conversation today is a lot around creativity um, and around wellness. And I think, interestingly, okay, full disclosure, I said that Raul and I are really close. What I haven't disclosed is that we are basically COVID married.
You told everybody. It's a COVID marriage.
It's out there now.
Yep,
Yeah,
we're COVID married. Well, we talk all the time.
every day. We're
Basically.
talking like when we don't talk, the next day we go, that was weird. We didn't connect yesterday.
Um, and we were talking this morning at length and about the oxygen mask metaphor, about self-care, and about the need to prioritize self-care. And last week, I don't think you saw it necessarily, Raul, but we had an amazing guest, Twiggy, who talked about how self-care is basically a radical act. That and an act of revolution in this moment. That taking care of ourselves in this moment is actually very, very critical to that. So that was like very revelatory to me. And our conversation this morning around self-care was also kind of unlocked and important. It was a good timing, if you will. You can hear the
One of the things that I have a very hard time doing something for myself. I feel like I have to get through all the other things I have to do before I get to do anything for me. And generally, I never make it to the time for me. And so what we were talking about this morning is something that I think Mary Mitchell and I both relate to, is this idea that you're supposed to put your own oxygen mask on first before you help the passenger sitting next to you, that our responsibility in our life is really first to ourselves before we can help anybody else. But that feels very foreign to stop and take care of yourself, because I honestly forget to do it. Not forget to do it, think of it, but then think it's not a priority.
Yeah. And that breath work just then reminded me, like, oh, right, I should be doing that. Like, not that I like the word should, but I would like to be doing that. I would like to be.
When everything started with the pandemic and we were told to stay indoors, I downloaded an app, the Headspace app, and started meditating. And I found it so comforting. And we were dealing with a lot of grief in my family, right as things began. Like suddenly, it was just every day there was a death, or just terrible news. Not to mention among our colleagues in the theater community, suddenly it was just bad news all around. So people very personally close to me, people that I know, or people that we're just hearing about who are colleagues. And the meditation was really helping. And I have not, knowing how much it helps me, recently I have not returned to it. And I'm a little bit surprised by that, because I notice it. It actually helps, and I don't do it. So when you say should, I totally get that word. But I wonder what that is actually, what that impulse is even in myself. I'm not beating myself up about it. It was like, this helps, so why do you not take time out for it? It was a new thing I tried, and it really helped. So what is that?
And not that this applies to you because I don't know, but what Twiki was talking about last week was really important. You have a group of people who are told that they're marginalized, they're not important, that how they feel and think are not important to our culture. So when when you're told that and you actually take a stand and you say, wait a minute, I am important and I'm going to take care of myself because I have something to give, that is a radical act. Um, for most of us, or a lot of us, like for me, is same with you, Raul. I know how great meditation feels, and every time I do it, I feel like I'm actually coming home and coming back to myself. But then we get busy. We
Yep.
forget how important it is to be grounded, centered, and in our own being, so that we can offer the world that which we are.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right. And I think, going to creativity for wellness. I think so. Roll and I put together this Sondheim celebration.
Well, that's what I want to say. You all manifested something great, not even knowing you were manifesting it. This Sondheim celebration with 2.3 million viewers.
Is that where we're
It's
at now?
crazy. That's where we're at right now.
You're at
For a two,
2.3 million viewers.
and those
Okay.
are those are unique views. Although who knows how many people have actually watched inside that, and it's kind of extraordinary to think that a 2.5 hour concert has received that many views. These are not the individual videos. The individual videos that Broadway.com put out separately are in the hundreds of thousands. So actually, it's even higher than this. My dad, who loves to do math and figure out what numbers add up to, pointed out to me that if you think about that number, what this equals is a large Broadway size, like a 1,500 seat house, playing sold out 8 shows a week without a single empty seat for 5 years.
Okay for dad.
That is a very potent
That's
descriptor.
his
That is a
that's his way
potent.
of. It is very powerful, just in terms of how many eyes the internet really leads to, and
And,
how many people that really represents.
and I remember that night watching, um, and it brought a lot of healing to the one thing that in the beginning when it started, people were saying is, you all by putting on this event were actually opening people's hearts and you gave them inspiration because they were all locked in quarantine, and you saw how much people missed the arts and how much you were affecting them. That was the concert over and over. Please don't take this off the internet. Thank you so much for doing this. This is what is missing in my life. So, how did this concert come to be? How did you all manifest this?
Raul?
I was sitting at home as the pandemic started to kick into high gear, and we were all told to stay home. And it became, it was around the time of Steve's birthday, so there was going to be an opening night party for Company, which Mary Mitchell and I have a deep relationship with as a musical, and it was going to be on Steve's birthday, and so I thought that's going to be a very emotional evening to get to be there and also celebrate his 90th birthday, but also celebrate our show with all these new artists creating a Katrina and Patty and the whole company creating an entirely new version of this. So it's bittersweet, and that moment didn't get to happen. I thought this can't go by. Like we can't let Steve's 90th birthday go by. Somehow we have to do something to celebrate him. So the first idea was, what if we created kind of like viral videos? Like I would sing a song and then we'd toss it to the next person and be like, hey, you go and sing a song. But then we thought, no, wait a minute. I thought, what if we actually just create a concert online? And Mary Mitchell and I have been talking about A-Step, and we have been talking about, the organization's probably going to be okay, but the people that the kids we help are not necessarily going to get the help that we're used to giving. And you used the word triage, Mary Mitchell. You said, like, I think after all this is over, we're going to be in triage. And I thought, well, why don't we combine the two things? And I said, I have this idea for a concert. What if we help raise some money for A-Step? And I went to Paul and said over at Broadway.com and said, hey, what if we make this? And would you show it? And he said, yeah. And we made one decision that I think was kind of key, which was we decided to wait. We waited over a month. before we settled on a date. Not settled on a date, before we broadcast it. We decided to take our time putting it together because this is very early on. And the reason I think that's key is because something happened that we did not know would happen in the interim, which was that what you just expressed, Keith, which is that people needed something that we didn't know was missing, and we could not have planned that. Like, there was that was serendipity, and that was something much bigger than us. Many of the things that have happened in the concert feel like something much bigger than us was at play.
Well, it was the same night as the opening of the original company,
Yeah,
which
completely
we didn't
coincidental.
plan either.
Yeah. And the artists who said yes were so extraordinary. The putting it together experience, which Mary-Mitchell can talk about because she was totally in the trenches, for me felt like returning to childhood. I felt like I was back in my parents' music room and listening to cast albums as a kid, because what was coming in every day were these videos from the giants. And I said this, I remember watching a few videos, because Katrina's video for Joanna and then Donna's video for Sending the Clowns came in around the same time, at around 11 o'clock at night on the Friday before. And I watched them, Bill and I watched them back to back, and just sat in complete silence for 5 minutes. And this is going to sound maybe dramatic, but the word sacred was what went through my head. And I thought, this is sacred space. These two artists have created something unforgettable, and we are entrusted with it. And I just felt we're walking. I thought, who the hell do I think I am? We're walking with giants. We're walking with giants.
That's how it felt while we were watching it. Even though it had a little bit of a rough start.
Oh boy.
Okay, wait. Can we talk about one thing wellness oriented? Because I just want to point out. So we're all during the rough start, which Raúl and I were in a lot of communication for a while, and then suddenly we were not in communication.
That's when things got bad.
things went a little rough, and you were like, I'm rocking in a corner, like I'm in a fetal position.
The first part was like the technical stuff took a while to upload. The video was huge, and we had done a kind of giant Zoom call with everybody participating, which just knocked us backwards because it's Steve and everybody, and we were all celebrating his birthday. But as each artist would pop up, you'd just kind of be like, what am I part of? And Ian Armitage was my favorite on that. I've told this story where he just kept saying, look who's here, like whoever would pop up. He's 11, so he's like, it's Miss Bernadette Peters, it's Mr. Lin-Manuel Miranda, it's Mr. Groban. He would just shout like he was welcoming them on the red carpet. So there was a lot of like excitement that it felt like we were all in the room together for a minute. When it started to delay, I thought, well, we'll be okay. And speaking of Lynn and Ian, they started doing the Lord's work because they just started just getting the word out there. We're late, we're delayed, it's okay. That's what happens on openings. It was the half hour after it should have worked when the mic went out and we didn't know why, and the streaming platform froze. Because remember, Paul Antoric is streaming from his house to 100,000 people on a laptop in the Catskills. And everything went, and the only way to fix it was to go into total silence. Two things happened. First, my friend Lauren Fox said that she said, your body does not know. She called me and said, actually through Michelle, she goes, your body does not know what it's experiencing. So if you laugh, it'll release joy.
Mm-hmm.
It'll release things.
Endorphins too.
It'll release endorphins. So I began to laugh, but then I began laughing maniacally, which I totally forgot.
He did, and all Priyanka and I heard was you laughing maniacally, and we were like.
But the laughter kind of kept me calm, and then once everything went to dead silence, and it was pretty clear to me that we were going to have to cancel the whole thing, and it was a catastrophe, and over 100,000 people had disappeared. That was when I ended up in the fetal position on the floor of the kitchen, rocking.
You know, I think I was having sympathetic pains for you all because I was Mary-Mitchell the day before. We were on a Zoom call, and she was telling us that this was going to happen, and she was a little nervous about how big it had become, and so I tuned in, and I think I was on the floor rocking too. I was like, oh no.
Exactly.
But you know,
I can say two things about it though. On one end, this is a very exposed business that we're in. You must be extraordinarily vulnerable in order to do good work as an artist or an actor or singer or dancer. You have to expose yourself. That exposure is ultimately terrifying. It is both the reward and the great fear that happens simultaneously. It's the great terror. So particularly in terms of being live, something in front of an audience is both incredibly safe because it's a story you're telling and you can take all kinds of risks, while there is also no net to catch you because every mistake becomes glaring. And one of my greatest fears, I think, is being exposed, is dealing with the sort of shame of being found out. Like, this is the one where they'll see that I'm a complete fraud. And that's like a deep, somewhere way deep inside. So this tapped that instantly, like a kind of, oh my God, everybody knows I'm a failure. I'm catastrophic now. And I will never recover. There's that fear. But the other side of it is that without that, I don't think, without the glitches, I don't think the event would maybe have become as extraordinarily powerful as it did. Because what it did was create a live event in a way that we could never have created ourselves. Everybody was in on it.
Very live. Very, very live.
Very live.
And very, very powerful. No, so you brought up a really important point. So both of you, Mary Mitchell, Raúl, you're successful. You have been successful you're acknowledged for your successes as a musical director, as an actor. You've been nominated for every award that a man can be nominated for on stage. And then, why do you think it's so easy to go into the shame? Why do you think maybe one instance where something doesn't go the way that we think it's going to go, we are reduced to everything being bad, or we're shameful, or we're not a good. Do you have any opinions on that?
I mean, I think about what Sierra was talking about when she was on, Sierra Bogus, and she was talking about affirmations and the importance of affirmations and why, I feel like strangely you have to come up with a lot of affirmations to offset just a few really negative things, because that balancing is really important, because you can like get a lot of really good reviews, but if somebody says something negative and you read it, it's the only thing you remember.
It's the only thing you hear.
The
The Oatmeal has a whole thing online about that, like me after reading 1,000,000 happy reviews, me after reading 1,000,001 with one bad review, and the guy's like sobbing. It's I'm like, you totally relate. I think part of it is you have to stay so deeply in the moment, and that's easy to do when you're actually in it. It's the stuff leading up to it and surrounding it that is not. And we all wrestle with these doubts. I think the doubts are part of what put us on stage in the first place. I think that the deep insecurity is part of what makes an interesting performer. You at first are very fearless, but for me, the more successful I become, the more I'm aware of what's at stake. And so that fearlessness has slipped away. It's fascinating. There's a story that Barbra Streisand, I think I may have referenced this before, but I always reference this story. Barbra Streisand tells a story about holding Judy Garland's hand when they sang that really great duet of Happy Days Are Here Again. That Judy Garland's hand was shaking, and she didn't understand why. But that now Streisand gets it. And that really hit me, because I didn't understand what Streisand was talking about at all when I read that many, many, many years ago. And now I'm like, oh, I see. When the play begins, my heart begins to race, because I know more and more every time. More is at stake. More expectations. More, and I guess I put that on myself. And so both makes me probably better at what I do, but it also just makes me constantly aware of how much I have to lose, which is a paradoxical part of being more successful, is that the expectations keep rising higher and higher. Never being totally satisfied is okay.
Right.
And, I will remind you, Mary Mitchell, about negativity bias, because we've talked about this on this program before, and while I don't know if you know about it, but our brains are programmed for negativity bias. We are programmed to remember the negative, the dangerous, because as we evolved, we don't want to have to relearn what hurts us.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, at one point it was just stay away from that which would kill us. But now we're in a point in our evolution where usually what hurts us is what someone says about us, or something injures our emotions, but our brain is wired to remember that. And so a lot of times if you look back on all the accomplishments that you have in life, you forget all of the great parts, but you can remember every single negative part. And that's hardwired into our brain. But that's why it's important
Yeah.
to do things.
You're relating to something that I think is certainly very, very, very true for me at least. I generally go straight to the negative because I think if I can identify it first, it won't hurt so bad when it happens. And then it leads me to making predictions about how things are going to go, which don't necessarily happen. But I give that voice more credence until I sometimes, I'm not good at it, but sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, that's just a voice in my head. It's just my head. Why is the negative voice more powerful than the one that says you're good? Why is the one that says you're going to be all right so quiet, and the one that says you're terrible, the one I think is that's reality?
Mhm.
Well, you
That
know best. It's still just me talking to me, except for some reason I
it's
listen to the one who's
hardwired in.
mean.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about with Sierra about the positive affirmations. By doing positive affirmations, you can actually start hardwiring the positive into
Mhm.
the brain instead of the negative.
Which is incredibly powerful, and another thing that I think would be very, very beneficial for all of us to be doing. One of my favorite things about Raul as an artist, I just want to say, is how much you value process over product in many capacities. And I think that's one of the things that you and I bonded over in the beginning is how much we love the process. Like we're passionate about sort of like getting in the dirt and just
Yeah,
sort of like exploring things. But I'm
and
curious,
work.
yeah. And I think
I was gonna
that
say working
that
with two geniuses of that skill set, like between Steve and John Doyle, that is all about process.
yes, that version of company that was all
Yeah,
process. I mean, we have a lot of good stories from that time frame, which we won't go into right now. But but there are many.
someday, someday we'll
Um,
do a comedy episode.
Someday we'll do a comedy episode. But but I'm curious what your thoughts are about the ways that we use process and creativity to process trauma, and the ways that like events of our lives feed into our art and vice versa.
I often try not to use things from my life. I don't try to substitute things from my life as an actor into a performance because I don't think of acting as therapy, though it certainly has therapeutic qualities. I think it's a little dangerous to play with what you have actually experienced. I can only think of a few times where I have consciously chosen to access something that really happened to me on stage. One was during the Normal Heart, and that was many years after the event that I was using. And it was a very, very, very traumatic event in my life. And the grief and pain that that tapped into was almost uncontrollable on stage. But it was exactly what was needed for the role. Then there's also an interesting side of things, like Leap of Faith, which is a show that I am very, very fond of. However, it turned out in the end was a score almost entirely about faith and seeking faith and looking for something outside of yourself to believe in. Where that show required in its process the excavation of joy. And that's one of the reasons I fell in love with it, because I had not consciously ever played a role that was entirely about accessing, in the end, utter joy. And so finding sources for complete joy in my life, that was sort of a fascinating from the opposite side. And not because the trauma is always easier to pull into. I find that I use process as a way to be very, very simple with myself because I get complicated about how I think and how I perform. I force myself into basics. I literally try to reteach myself how to act on every part as though I'd never done it before. So my process is to walk into a room and be open to whatever that room has to offer. That isn't how I started. I started by having lots of ideas and doing lots of research and dramaturgy, which I love. But I have, particularly because of John Doyle and that production of Company, I learned to create without chaos and walked into a room to learn to be open to whatever might happen in the space. And then you're just accessing not something you've been through, but something that just kind of lives in you. Where I find the comfort of moving through the steps, almost as though there were a recipe I was following to try to create a role, eventually I throw it away, but building that structure comforts me in the sense that the massive trauma that everyone on earth is living through now, which hits me constantly, I have to keep being reminded, oh, every single person you know is going through this, and every person you don't know is going through this. The entire planet is hurting, all of us. It feels rude to me to think that my parents, my beautiful mom and dad in their 70s down in Miami are wearing masks. I just feel like that's not right. I can handle that in New York, but my parents shouldn't have to do that. They already went through what they went through and the Cuban Revolution and reinventing their lives in exile and all the things they did here. They shouldn't have to keep going through this. It seems rude. And so in this constant trauma that I think we wake up to every day, I am finding that making things, particularly making that concert, forcing myself to get up every day and taking myself through the step-by-step structural building of a creative endeavor. And that's, I guess, what I would call the process now, because it's actually having to decide, I'm going to sit at the table and I'm going to do this, is keeping me sane. And for a little...
I love that, what you said, creating without chaos. Because, in science, we talk about, and in Eastern medicine, creation and destruction being one. And creating without chaos is, to me, beautiful, that you're creating this, whatever it is, piece, art, without creating chaos for the people around you. And we're going through a lot of that right now. I mean, it's important, the creation that we're going through, but there is a lot of chaos.
I think, listen to the Black advocacy conversations online with some Broadway coalition sitting and talking about leaning into the experience we're going through now in a way that is extraordinarily positive was so powerful, where it was like, yes, things are burning and the world is upside down. We are in this together. Here's how you can join in. Here's how you can listen. Lean into this. That was, they kept repeating that, and I kept thinking, I've had my own experiences as a Cuban actor that are similar in some ways and also very, very different to what people are expressing right now. Stories felt very familiar to me. But in the chaos, there is this effort to say, like, we're going to make something of this. We're going to find a space of quiet, and we're going to find a space in this noise to listen to each other. And that gives me, actually, speaking of hope, that gives me some hope. When I say that about creating, I am an actor who always thought I had to blow everything up, break everything in the room in order to create some interesting work. And some directors that I've worked with, the very finest directors that I've worked with, the John Doyles and Frank Collattis and Chris Ashleys and Grazie Daniels and Dan Sullivans, they don't do that. They don't work in that world. And what they do is make a space where you get real quiet and calm and start to get real creative. And that was a major revelation to me. Wow. And maybe that's also part of just getting older, but it was a major revelation to me that I could be just as good if I trusted and just got real still, as opposed
to quiet and still,
instead of blowing it up.
Amazing.
I do want to say something, Mary Mitchell, because we had this little conversation. Sorry if I'm interrupting you, but we do have viewers who are in the healing arts and have no idea about Broadway. Tell us who Steve is.
Oh, Stephen Sondheim we're talking about. He's a composer, probably the most important composer of the American musical theater, the second half of the 20th century.
He's very good.
He's very good.
Very good at his job.
He wrote West Side Story when he was 26.
No big deal.
No big deal.
One thing you mentioned, Raúl, about your parents, which I totally relate to as far as like thinking about what people are going through. But one thing that people have brought up to me when they've had conversations with their grandparents through this process of this pandemic has been these stories of like hearing from their grandparents, stories that they've been through, like other huge life wars and events and things, and sort of the recognition that we will survive this as well. Like, and there's like a beautiful, like, I think, level of resilience. And I like know from you and your family how resilient your family has been through a lot of challenges.
My family, Michelle's family, like the things that the stories they would tell about what it was like to leave Cuba and come to this country and reinvent their lives, I would think to myself, I couldn't possibly do that. But, I thought my generation hasn't been tested in that way.
Hmm.
And yet I think we're all tested in some way. And the question is how you rise to that occasion. I'm seeing it now. And people are rising to the occasion in many ways. Certainly here in New York, it's extraordinary to see. And I remember once reading a thing about that Abraham Lincoln wrote that he was speaking to the Young Men's Lyceum before he was president, and he said, something is coming, something will test us, and something will test what this nation is, and it's coming for your generation, boys. So what will you stand for? You have to decide. It was easy for Washington and Jefferson and all these people, but we've entered a phase where it's not so easy for us to decide what we stand for because it is unclear. But you had better get very clear because something is coming. And it's a spectacular speech, and you think this was well before he was president. And I actually think of that speech a lot because I think what is in the air is something you can rise to now. And I'm comforted by what you're saying. I'm comforted by the idea that there have been other crises in the world. There have been global things, but nothing quite like this.
Nothing quite like this.
Nothing quite like this because we are so connected
Yeah.
now that nothing like this where every single person on earth is affected has ever
But
happened.
and it's very important for people. It's very important for people to realize that if it takes this for people to realize that we are connected. I mean, holistic medicine and wellness has said, you're only as well as the whole. And a lot of us have forgotten that, our health depends on the health of everyone else, and our well-being depends on the well-being of everyone else, and that we are connected. We are one.
Absolutely. I always call that ecological thinking,
Hmm.
It's not hierarchical thinking, it's ecological. It's the I always reference, the wolves of Yellowstone get reintroduced to the wild. People said that was a bad thing. No. The Rangers of Yellowstone have said that's the key that went into the lock that changed the whole ecosystem. Everything got healthy because something was missing.
Hmm.
One animal was gone, another animal was overpopulating. The grasses were dying, the trees weren't, blah, 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 blah. The population was growing. Suddenly, an animal's introduced and everything comes into balance. We each affect each other in the same way. It's impossible to think that what's happening in America right now isn't affecting Europe, isn't affecting Asia, isn't affecting Africa. That it feels like we're all very far apart, and we're not. And I've been very aware of that most of my life because when you grow up in a Cuban household in Miami in the 70s and 80s, you're more interested in what's happening in Cuba than what's happening in America. So I was always sort of seeing double about seeing America from the outside and realizing that a lot of times America had no interest whatsoever in what was happening beyond its borders. And now that's not a luxury the country can afford anymore.
No, we are definitely connected. Do you have any advice, Raul, for people who are feeling stuck right now in this situation?
No, I guess the only advice is what I was just talking about earlier. I think you can make your own circumstances in terms of however silly it feels. It's worth getting up in the morning and choosing to do the one or two things that you think are maybe impossible, like creating that Sondheim concert. Choosing to do it anyway. The doubts will still be there, but choosing to do one or two things for yourself that maybe you haven't been brave enough to do before. Even if it's just at your living room table, even if it's just for 10 minutes, I have found that to help me feel unstuck. And aside from that, I really enjoy going for long walks in the quiet city.
Yes.
Getting outside
I
seems
think
to help.
fresh air is really not to be uh, underrated. Like, it is just so powerful to me.
That
Yeah,
has
I
to be
feel like the
very.
world is.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it feels like the world is ending inside your apartment for a minute, but you step outside, you're like, oh, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say it has to be a crazy feeling in New York right now to walk out and have space. I'm assuming
Yes.
you have space when you walk out. I
Yes.
haven't been to New York in a while.
Yeah, we do. We do. I mean, the city is slowly coming back to life, but it's not exactly what you expect. And one of the things that I miss most about New York is the ways that we all sort of interact. That's what you don't live in New York to be by yourself. I mean, you can be, but you live in New York because this is happening all the time.
Right.
And sometimes you're like, oh, leave me alone. But sometimes like, wow, this is amazing.
Okay,
Oh,
I have a little lightning round of questions for you. You ready? Just
Okay.
like whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
What's your favorite thing to do for self-care?
Read.
What do you love to do first thing in the morning?
Make a cup of coffee, and I like to sit down and write.
What's your favorite food?
Lechón con arroz blanco y frijoles negros. So that's pork with white rice and black beans.
I know this dish well. It is one of my favorite dishes as well.
It's not one of your favorite dishes.
I love it too.
Things. Okay. Beach or mountains?
Beach with mountains. I mean,
that's
beach
very-
always, but beach with mountains. Like, is there anything more beautiful and holy in the world than Big Sur, California?
Point. Where do you think of as home?
Miami.
How do you deal with being angry?
I don't deal very well with being angry. You know that. That's a terrible question for me.
All right, I'm going to pause you right here. I'm going to pause you right here because I did not ask this question earlier because we were going into some deep conversation. But Raul, what you don't know about me is I'm known in my field for being a diagnostician, that I can look at people and diagnose what's going on with them. And for you, I've diagnosed small thing rage.
You have ESP, clearly.
I have ESP.
I have
I
small
thought
thing
it-
rage.
You have small thing rage.
I do. She coined the term. It's true.
I
will.
those of you that don't know the backstory on that, I created the term small thing rage with Raúl for moments when perhaps anger at other things was coming out in.
I won't get upset about something really huge, but I'll get really
No,
upset
totally
about
calm about
something
that.
tiny.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if there's a big problem, I'll be like, okay, we got this. But if there's a tiny issue, that will really set me off.
It's amusing and I love it. What sound what sound do you love?
Surf, the sound of the surf.
Okay. All right, last question. If you were a spice, what spice would you be?
Cumin.
Oh,
Mm,
that was unexpected. But I
complex.
Cumin. That's easy. It's
All
like my
right.
favorite spice. I don't know why.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. It smells like other worlds.
That's true. It's like an adventure.
It is. It's an adventure spice. It makes me, I love to travel. Like if I could do anything, it would be to take that book that I love to read and have it, with me to read about be in another country. Like I love to travel. I love to expand my world by going other places and learning about them and meeting people there. And that would be if I could do anything with my life, it would be travel. If I could figure out a way to make that a job. And have that coffee and read and write in the morning in everywhere else on earth. So cumin just makes me think of like, oh, I haven't been to India yet,
Well, A Step can take you there.
I know.
All right. This has been awesome.
This is really nice.
Thank you for joining us.
I feel
Thank
so
you,
chill.
Raul.
Thanks, you guys.
Practice your breath work.
Oh, well.
Thank you, A Step, for having us. Next week, we're going to be back. We're going to have Dr. Jill Blakeway, who is a licensed acupuncturist in New York City. So you're going to have a local resource. She's the author of 3 books on health and healing, and she's going to be talking about energy healing and how we transmit energy from one person to another. So we'll be back next week. Mary Mitchell, thank you. Raúl,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank
All
you,
right.
Keith.
Everybody be well.
Great.